Welcome to Parenting Great Kids. This is a very special day. This is our 200th episode, and it's really hard to believe. I am excited to have my producers here, Jessica Daley and the brilliant Mike Segovia. Thanks for joining me, guys.
Oh,
thanks for having us, Meg.
Thanks for having us, Meg. Man, this is incredible, Meg. 200 episodes. This is amazing.
It really is.
Where did the time go?
It just absolutely flew by, and there's just so many great shows and so many great memories, Meg. Hasn't it been great all these years doing this podcast?
Oh, it's wonderful. And you and I have worked together so long. It's like we're brother and sister. It's really, really fun. And I just feel so grateful to have had the incredible guests over the years that I've had. And we're going to highlight some of them today. And the people have amazing stories. Honestly, for me, it's just been really humbling to meet and interview such extraordinary people.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Jessica and I were even talking a while back about some of these guests and how amazing it is just for her and I to be able to jump on and produce this with you, but to meet the guests. And Jessica, don't you agree there's like so much wisdom that you've gotten by listening to some of these guests that Meg's had?
Yeah, absolutely. It's very humbling and just beautiful to be a part of this process and seeing kind of what goes into it behind the scenes. And Meg, all the hard work that you're pouring out that I don't think people necessarily get to see when they just hear the polished product at the end that Mike puts together so well. But it's a lot of time spent, research done. Sometimes we're jumping on late to record things or, getting up early and trying to match our schedules, from different time zones and whatnot. And so there's a lot that goes into it. And it's just been so humbling to be able to be a part of the process and learn from the wisdom of all of these guests over the years.
It really has. And I just can't tell you how much I appreciate you two. You're just fabulous. Easy to work with, professional. You make me look so good.
You don't need much help with that.
No, but if people hear the raw episodes, it's pretty amazing. When people listen to a podcast, you think, oh, you just sat down and called somebody up and interviewed. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to choose the guests and vet the guests and schedule the guests and then to record and you name it, we've had it go wrong. We've been on with some really great people and all of a sudden our internet connection goes down or my mic quits or, we lose them. And, one of the worst was when we were interviewing Eric Metaxas.
Yes.
And the interview was going along great. And then boom. We lost him. It was so embarrassing. He hasn't come back yet, but I know he wanted to get on here.
I do remember that.
What can you do?
That's right.
But what can you do? Yeah. It's like the bloopers. We should have podcast bloopers. It'd be really fun.
I think that's a good idea. Yeah, I think we need to do that. And you're right, Meg and Jess. There's so much that goes behind this. And we have such an awesome team and so many people that vet out the guest and book the shows and review the books. And then they bring it to us and we're able to record and put it together and do all that stuff. So it's so amazing to be surrounded by such a great team at Parenting Great Kids. It really is a blessing.
Mm-hmm.
It is.
Well, and just the guests that we're able to interview, Philip Rivers and Benjamin Watson and David Tyree and Laura Ingram and Tucker Carlson. I'm tickled that today we're going to do a reel of some of my favorite shows that we've done over the past few years.
Absolutely. Again, there's been 200 episodes, and some of those have been part 1 and 2, because the interviews are so fantastic. They just have to carry on to 2 days. So Meg has picked out some of her favorite shows from the past 7-8 years, something like that it's been. So we're going to be happy to play these clips for you and kind of go down memory lane. So as we get into it now, we want to begin with an interview that Dr. Meg did with Melanie Hempie. And that was first recorded and released back in May of 2022. And this had to do with toxic screen time. And Meg, I know that's near and dear to your heart, toxic screen time.
It is. And what I loved about the show with Melanie is she had answers. She said, here's what you can do if you're worried about your kids and social media. So, we hear a lot about social media and the bad effects, but Melanie actually has a solution. And that's why I wanted to replay part of that show.
All right, well, let's go ahead and get into it now with Melanie Hempie and Dr. Meg Meeker's interview titled Toxic Screen Time on today's edition of Parenting Great Kids.
You could look at every measurable thing that we can measure in adolescent's life, and kids who are not burdened with smartphones and social media score higher in every single area. Everything from their academics to, their family attachment, to their interest in their hobbies and their exercise and their eating habits and their sleeping habit, everything that you can possibly measure, they do better. So why not? Why not just give them that gift of 48 months? And that's what our organization is there to do, to help and encourage parents to do that.
It's interesting because in my experience, 99% of parents don't want their kids on video games and they don't want them on social media and phones, but they feel insecure in making that step and saying, not for you. And I always wondered, if you could get 2 or 3 or 4 mothers, fathers in your kids' class to say, we're going to be the parents who aren't going to let our kids have cell phones and sort of empower each other. That's really what you're talking about that you do, but it's more on a micro level. Have you ever seen anything like that be done?
Yes, actually, when I started making the decision to have a game-free home and a smartphone-free home, and by the way, we also have a porn-free home. When I made that decision, when my younger boys were in 3rd grade, we did start a book club. And so that group of moms, we all got together. There were about 8 of us, and our boys all play together all through middle school. And today at Screen Strong, we help families start these groups, these Screen Strong groups in their churches, in their schools, in their neighborhoods. And we give them the tools to do this. You are absolutely right. You're absolutely 100% right. If you cannot get your own little community around it, it's going to be really hard. I'm not saying that you can't do it, but it's so much easier when you get your little group of friends and your like-minded friends together and you support each other. And at Screen Strong, we try to give you the words. What I have discovered, if parents, moms especially, when they're out and about talking to their friends and, feeling that pain that, oh no, I'm doing something wrong by not giving my child a smartphone, it's because they don't have the language. They don't understand how to explain it. That's what my mission is in life, is to break this down so simple so you can do this little course. You can say, oh, now I know how to explain this to my friends. And just, for example, little things like when we have new neighbors move in, could my 10-year-olds go play with them? Well, I would have to go over and say, Andrew and Evan are allergic to video games, and we would laugh, and I would say, they're allergic to porn too. So would it be okay if they could just play outside? I really don't want them playing video games. Yeah. And that has worked so well for so many parents, because you just got to have some words. You got to know how to be different. The other thing that I think really trips up parents, this is a huge myth, is they think they can balance all of this and just, hey, let's just do this in moderation. And Melanie, isn't it really okay? I mean, moderation in all things, right? Well, the words around that go like this. No, we don't moderate things that are bad for our kids. We balance things that are good for our kids, but we don't moderate everything in our life. As parents, you have values. You have like an A list and a B list. You have your negotiables and your non-negotiables. So in our family, video games and social media and all the stuff that goes with that, that's non-negotiable. So we let them, of course, get their haircuts and pick out their clothes and do all the things that teenagers want to do. But there's just certain things that are not negotiable. That really helps parents understand, oh, yeah, that's right. I don't really think that smoking and drinking and shoplifting are negotiable at my house, and I'm not going to allow that. Well, if you don't think viewing porn and playing video games, for 10 hours a day, or even scrolling social media and posting, naked pictures of yourself is negotiable, then put that on the non-negotiable list and say no. But we've got to have a community around it. We do so much better changing when there's community. In fact, I think it's very difficult to change and to do this detoxing kind of thing without a community. It's very, very hard. So we have to be there to support each other.
Wow, that was such a powerful interview. I remember that. And that was one of our top shows of all time, Meg. Again, Meg, toxic screen time. Just briefly, what does that mean to you and just kind of this generation today?
Mike, in my pediatric practice over the last 10 years, I've seen a huge swell in social media use in younger and younger girls. And at the same time, I've seen a huge swell of depression in these kids. And I actually had a couple of kids try to commit suicide, and they said that part of it was because they felt on social media they never matched, or they never lived up to the person they wanted to be. And that was very sad. So I really appreciated what Melanie had to say in that interview.
Yeah, it was amazing. Jess, we have another clip here, and we're excited about it. It's Stephen Curtis Chapman. What do we have next, Jess?
So this episode with Stephen Curtis Chapman is titled The Hope of Adoption. And so as you listeners can imagine, the show is about adoption and all the beauty and pain that goes into that. And it's a beautiful mix of both, as you're going to hear from the Chapmans. And in this interview, it's not just Stephen talking, but it's also his wife, Mary Beth, and their daughter, Emily, who was heavily involved in creating and nurturing this desire in her parents to want to adopt a child. And so we brought her in for the interview as well. And I hope that for the listeners out there, this is meaningful and moving to you as it has been to us.
And Jess, what I think it's really important for our listening audience to know is that before this interview, Stephen and his wife, Mary Beth, had lost a beautiful young girl very tragically in their home through a car accident. And it's important to have that background, because as you listen to them talk about adoption, you'll hear the calm and the peace in their voice, because this has been a really rough road for them. And for them to come out and talk about adoption is just extraordinary.
Yeah, Meg, I agree. Hearing the journey that the Chapmans have been on and where they are today after all the hardship that they've gone through is so powerful. So let's go ahead and play this episode for you. It's called The Hope of Adoption with Stephen Curtis Chapman.
I'll chime in just real quickly, because I've thought about this a lot as I've been singing my songs and telling my story on tour night after night. I'm kind of in an interesting season right now with my music, and I'm doing a lot of, having written my story recently, released my autobiography called Between Heaven and the Real World, and just telling the story of meeting Mary Beth and then our children and then adoption and all of this, kind of remembering it and reliving it and retelling it night after night with music. I've been singing a little bit of the song I wrote for Emily when she was about this age. It was a song called Fingerprints of God that I wrote really as she was kind of just going through a lot of trying to figure out if she was beautiful and not feeling that, and just wanting to encourage her. But it's interesting as I sing the song now, and I look back and see how God's fingerprints were, even in ways that we didn't even realize, on Emily's life and heart, and moving us in a direction that we didn't even know at the time. That song is so fun to sing it now, because I even realize more as I look at the work of Show Hope, I look at our own story of adoption, and all the ways that God's hands have been on and working through Emily's life and our family in a pretty profound way.
That was a powerful interview, and I wish you could have heard the whole thing then, but these are abbreviated clips we're playing because this is episode 200 of Parenting Great Kids. So right there, you just heard a little clip from Stephen Curtis Chapman himself. And if you want to go back and hear the entire interview, it's episode 41. And the name of it again is The Hope of Adoption. You can just go to meekerparenting.com, click on the podcast tab. You can listen to that and all of your other favorites that you may have missed over the years. Now, this next episode I'm really excited about is Phillip Rivers, and he was a quarterback for the San Diego Chargers back in the day. But a cool story before we kind of get into that. One time, Meg and Jess, I was at the airport in Dallas, and I was getting ready to go to the men's room. And as I was going in, this big gentleman with the cowboy hat was coming out, and this guy was giant. And I looked at him, and I said, "Wait a second, you're Phillip Rivers, right?" And he goes, "Yes, sir." And I said, "No way, man." And I could tell that he was in a hurry, so he just shook my hand. He goes, "Have a good day." And he slapped my arm, and it hurt because he's a big guy. So, yeah, I just thought he was really cool, and he has a great story, and he has a big family. And he's going to talk about being a hero dad. And Meg, I know right now that's really dear to your heart, being a hero dad. Speak to that.
Yeah, my heart is for encouraging and teaching fathers, because moms get a lot of encouragement and teaching, but dads are kind of left out. And what I wanted to do was interview some amazing dads. Phillip Rivers has 8 kids in addition to being a football star. He's a great dad, and I wanted to interview him because I thought it would make a lot of men listen, but also to understand, here's a professional hero, but more importantly, he's a hero to his kids. And a lot of dads hear that term and they go, "Oh, come on, that's cheesy." But here's what they need to know. You dads may not think of yourself as a hero, but your kid does. And it's really important that you learn to see yourself through your kids' eyes. And I hope that you can kind of glean that from my interview with Phillip.
Yeah, Meg, I agree. It really was a great interview, and Phillip Rivers had a lot of wisdom for the listeners, and especially for men and for dads. So we're going to go ahead and play 2 clips from this interview because it was just so good. And there's a lot there that we want you dads especially to be able to hear and be encouraged by. So we're going to go ahead and play this episode titled Being a Hero Dad with Dr. Meeker and Phillip Rivers.
So do you work with your own kids to teach them the same thing? Listen, kids, I expect that you do the jobs that you're going to do very well. Do your kids have chores around the house?
Yes, they do. And I think, and we definitely do. And I think with having 8 children, they've learned, at least the older girls have learned, and they've had to be very selfless and be very unselfish and pitch in and help their mom and help me and go help your little sister. She needs help, finding her pull up to help her with her jammies to whatever it may be. But
yeah, that's right.
But we really do. I mean, a lot of things come to mind when you ask me that. I think ultimately we want to teach them to know, love, and serve God as a family of faith. That's the ultimate that we want to teach them. But then I think of, a lot of things come to my mind when you say that. We want them to be humble. I mean, I think the virtue of humility is very important, but at the same time, I want them to be, very confident. I can remember doing math lessons with my girls. We homeschooled for a while and then, learning math facts, and they weren't quite sure if they wanted to say it because they might be wrong. And I was like, just say it. If you say 9 and it was supposed to be 8, that's okay, but you thought it was 9, so say it, go for it.
Yeah,
so humble but confident. I mean, we want them to be resilient. And to always persevere and to never give up. We have a little phrase we say around our family, and actually a family friend that's a priest gave it to us, and it's a Latin phrase, nunc cepi. Now, I say it the Alabama way. I don't quite say it the Latin way, but nunc cepi, NUNCCOEPI, and it means now I begin, but it's kind of never ending, again and again and again. So that's kind of the thing we use to teach that perseverance and that resilience. Hey, you made a bad grade, well, nunc cepi. Hey, you forgot to make your bed, nunc cepi. Hey, you forgot your night prayers, well, nunc cepi. Start again tomorrow. Don't give up.
If you were going to talk to some young men, some 25, 26, 27-year-old dads who are first-time dads, and after you of course have 8 kids and you've been doing this a while here, being a dad, what are some of the things that you would want to tell them, words of advice, a couple words of advice that you would give younger dads?
Let's see. Yeah, gosh. I think the first thing with your children is to spend time with them. I think that's the biggest thing that we can give them is our time. And I think it's so many, and yes, we have long days, and I know dads work long hours and they're tired at the end of the day. And we have those days where we really do need to just take a deep breath. But I think spending time with our children the best we can and be engaged with them. They want our time. I think I mentioned earlier, but patience with the younger ones. And I've gotten better and better at that, especially when they start, let's say you have an 8-year-old and you also have a 5-year-old, where it's natural to think that the 5-year-old should be, come on, keep up with the 8-year-olds, you know? Yeah. And so I think being patient, realizing, no, maybe he's just 5, maybe she's just 3. She's not ready to be like the 6 and 7-year-old yet. And really time flies. I think just enjoy them. Enjoy those days that you hear feet running down the hall and you hear those little cries, because gosh, it seems like yesterday my oldest was born and now she's going to be a freshman in high school. So
I know
it goes so fast. The other thing that I think with boys too, that I'm finding with my older son, is now that he's 9 years old, and of course I'm still playing football, which is different. I'm still actually playing. So is that balance of being a friend and a dad. I think that's so critical, and it's hard. It's hard for me too sometimes, because I enjoy just being his buddy and playing in the yard, but there has to be that balance and that distinction of that. I think that's very critical, not to ever really let it turn into where he just sees you as a buddy. I think it needs to always be the line drawn, and like I already said that every child is different. And lastly, and I think I would say to date your wives. You have to date your wife. Yeah, you have to.
You know what? You are far too nice to be playing in the NFL. Yeah. Oh, my heavens. You're right. You're absolutely right, though. Yeah, I hope okay, men, do you hear what Philip Rivers is saying? Date your wives. Okay, I interrupted you. Please continue. How do you date Tiffany?
Well, we try our hardest, and we never can possibly do this, but we try once a week. And obviously during the football season, that's almost impossible. But it's really more for us. It's not about going to an elaborate dinner or we used to always want to go to the movie. And then as we've grown, we're like, we don't want to sit beside each other for 2 hours and not speak. We want to go somewhere where we can talk and conversate. Right. So it's usually something very simple that we can grab a bite to eat and just enjoy being around one another and conversate. And I really do think that's critical, because going way back to earlier in the interview when you asked me that of how we support one another, I think that allows us, that time that we are able to spend together allows us to be better parents. And I certainly by no means, I always say this at those men's conferences, I by no means want to come across as we have it all figured out and we just have this little perfect old marriage and household, because I want to come across as a real person that people can, hopefully I can, again, you sow a few seeds that can help, but that we have the daily struggles like any family. I think sometimes, you see NFL players and you think, oh man, it must just be the life. And I am very thankful, because we are very, very blessed, but we have the same daily challenges that any family does. But I am very thankful to feel like we kind of got everything kind of somewhat under control, but always room to grow and always, again, trying to begin again each and every day and do better.
Meg, this was first recorded back in May of 2017. What is something that you really remember about interviewing Philip? Because he is a great person to interview.
I remember his humility. I was struck. I don't know anything about football, but I know that he's a big deal in the NFL. Mm-hmm. But when I heard him talk about his kids, his voice kind of changed. He's a very tender, loving dad. Mm. And, he's just such a humble man. And I was really excited to hear that, because humility is something that every dad needs, and he needs to be able to teach it to his kids too.
Well, I hope you're enjoying this special 200th episode of Parenting Great Kids. We need to take a quick break, but don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more of Dr. Meeker's favorite moments. Welcome back to Parenting Great Kids. Let's get back to the show. Here's producer Mike.
If you're just tuning in, you're listening to Parenting Great Kids. I'm Mike Segovia, and joining me is Jessica Daley. We are the producers of the show, and of course, Dr. Meg Meeker is the host of the show. We're so excited that you're joining us, and you're listening, and you're downloading, because over the years, we've had over 7 million downloads. So we know we're reaching you guys, and we'd love to hear from you and all that good stuff. So keep listening keep downloading. If you listen on Apple Podcast, you can go on there and you can rate and review the show. And it's just really exciting, all the things that have happened over these years. 200 episodes. This is just amazing. And Meg, I know you're really excited about this next guest, Peter Mutabazi. Meg, why are you so excited about this interview?
I'll be honest, when we were going to interview Peter, he does foster care and he's a single dad. And I thought, we've done a lot on adoption and foster care. But when I started interview him and I realized what he did and I realized how unique his parenting style was, I was really taken aback. Peter is a man who has adopted high-risk, high-need kids by himself, and he loves these kids and he parents them beautifully. And there are a lot of lessons I learned in listening to him talk about how he deals with the kids who give him a hard time. So I was just blown away by his heart and love and success with these kids.
Yeah, it really was inspiring for me as well when I listened back to it, Meg, because you learn so much from this man who came from a background of trauma himself, growing up in Uganda with an abusive dad and all that he had to go through to get to where he is now. And I think that as a parent myself, I see that it's so normal for us to default to how we were raised, what our parents did. Even if we grow up saying, I'm never going to be like that, or I'm not going to do that when I have kids. Until you've healed and learned a better way of doing things, we just automatically kind of default to what we know. And so for Peter to have overcome so much, and now he's doing things different with his kids, it just really speaks to his character and the type of person that he is to overcome so much adversity and be creating a better world through the beautiful story of adoption and foster parenting that he's living out.
So let's get to Peter Mutabazi. This was from episode 144, and the title is Encouragement for Children Who Are Adopted and in Foster Care. Let's get to it now on this special edition of Parenting Great Kids.
We're so quickly trying to get on to the next thing that we literally may say, I don't have time even to sit with this child for an hour when they're crying. What am I going to do? So then they try to curb the behavior. They send the kid to their room or they get angry at the kid. But really, helping that child is so much simpler. It requires so much more from us. And I think maybe that's where we're missing the boat as parents. Do you see this in parents around you?
In some way, yes. Timeout is timeout. But to a kid who's been in timeout for most of their lives, like, hey, anything they do, they are locked out in the room. Either mom is doing drugs somewhere or doing something with someone else, that they've always been locked in the room. So for me, when they do bad and say, hey, go to your room, I mean, am I triggering his past? Yes. But how can I still be a parent and help them? So for me, timeout is timeout in my office with me or timeout in my kitchen with me. So they're sitting, I'm there sitting. You're not going to play your video games. You're going to sit here with me in the kitchen as I clean or as I do dishes, because that's kind of what I want to win them over. Sending them to the other, it triggers more. So it doesn't, to them, it's no learning because that's kind of how the parents or where they're coming from, they were treated,
So your response to bad behavior was not to push them away. It was to draw them closer to you.
Correct.
Wow.
Because that's what, for me, mentally and as a kid, that's what I missed. If I did something, there was more of what I was trying to say, but no one understood me, if I was angry and nervous that my father was going to come later, someone else would think, why are you jiggly? Why can't you sit still? Because I'm fearful that the man who's about to come is about to hurt me in some way,
right. Well, and you're so smart. I think that, first of all, young children can't articulate their feelings.
No.
And a lot of parents will say, my 9-year-old just erupts and screams. How do I get her to articulate her feelings? I said, sometimes they just can't. They just need to vent. But then as kids get older, they have a hard time. But what you're saying is really don't expect that. Just sort of let them be. And over time, they'll it's almost like they need to purge the pain.
Correct. For us, I think sometimes also I have kids who are both biological, but the trauma has affected them differently, So I can't somehow assume every child will react the same way. Like you have to really approach them individually, on how they process, on how they work, One misses mom, but hey, it's fun. The other one is why. He's asking, why would she do that, Right. And so how you approach them is truly different, in that way.
Wow, really touching interview. Remember, if you want to go back and listen to the full episode, it's episode 144 with Peter Mutabazi. Okay, this next episode was one of my favorites, Meg, and I'm really excited about it. It's Tucker Carlson. What can you tell us about this interview, Meg, that was originally done back in June of 2018?
Yeah, I was excited to interview Tucker. I actually went to New York into his office and interviewed him for 2 parts on being a dad. I know that he has a great relationship with his father and his brother and spent a good part of his life without a mom. And I was interested to see what he had to say about his own dad and how that affected him as a dad of 4 kids himself. So he was very gracious, funny, and fun to be with.
All right, so here is Dr. Meeker's interview with Tucker Carlson, and the title of this interview is called The Importance of Fathers, and it is a part 1 and part 2 episode. So if you want to listen to the whole thing, you can go back and search the archives, and this is episode 57.
Where are fathers headed? What does the next 10 years look like for the survival of dads? And what can we, and I'm particularly talking about women, because I think we have a huge role to play in this, in the strengthening encouragement of our fathers, because fatherlessness, I'm convinced if we could get fathers back in the home, committed to their families, so many of our social ills would go away. Our cities would be safer. I really think fewer boys would shoot up schools.
Of course.
I really believe that, the inner cities, you move some great fathers into neighborhoods, drugs are going to go away.
Of course.
So where is fatherhood going, and what can we as men and women do to help fathers be restored to what they should be? Or not even restored, but to occupy their rightful place.
I think about this a lot. So the key divide is not between left and right, Republican, Democrat. It's between people who believe the family's the center of everything and those who don't.
Exactly.
People who care about children, who believe in God, and everybody else. And that cuts across religions, by the way. I have a lot more in common with your average faithful Shiite, nonviolent Shiite. I'm serious.
I agree.
Than I do with your average, hipster in Brooklyn who may be an Episcopalian or whatever. But I don't have anything in common with that person. Because I've got children and I care about them more than anything. I care about my marriage more than anything. So that's the divide. And the people in charge, unfortunately, are actively opposed to strong families. They really are. They seek to undermine them in every way. There's a reason you see those ads on TV, and there's a reason that
deconstruct
these
them.
100%. And so that's not sustainable over time. There's nothing magic about how to run a decent family. It's biological. The only reason we've screwed it up is because we've overthought it. You know exactly how it works. You know exactly what the problem in inner cities is. It's not because the color of the people who live there. It's because the families are screwed up.
But you listen to the news and we talk about...
They're idiots. They're idiots. And so, whenever I hear the school debate, it's it just cracks me up. Well, the teachers this, should we pay them more or less? Class size, it's no. Schools that are successful are the ones with good parents, actually. It's not even about the kids.
Tucker, you sound like me.
It's totally true. Yes, and I'm against teachers' unions or whatever, but I don't really care. Because the truth is, if the moms are engaged and their husbands are backing them up, they won't put up with a crappy school, period. They won't. They'll burn it down. They won't put up with that. Engaged parents will not put up with a bad education, or they'll leave. And so the problem, it's all about, everything is about the family. And you either get that or you don't. And the people in charge, again, for whatever the reason, are on the other side of it. And so I just see at some point a split. you don't want to live around people who are trying to wreck your family, actually. And at some point, you'll see critical mass of people who are like, they have different views on this or that, but I don't want to live in a place that is a threat to my children. Mm-hmm. And they're going to kind of go off by themselves. I'm not calling for civil war or anything, but I'm just saying that whatever's going on right now, not sustainable. And you will see people of like mind, again, of different religions and races. I'm not calling for, I hate all that race stuff, and I hate the religious division stuff. I'm talking about first principles. People who believe in those will be like, I want to live near other people who believe in the family. I do. And they will.
Right.
I mean it. That's going to happen because it's too basic. You can tax me too much, or you can, do this or that thing that I disagree with, or start this or that stupid war. Okay, fine. But if you're actually threatening my kids, I'm not. I don't want to be around that.
Well, it's fundamental to survival.
It's fundamental. It's exactly right. So I think people will start to congregate geographically with people who share those views and values, and I think they already to some extent have. I mean, you've seen massive movement in this country that never gets any coverage from state to state, region to region. Part of that is economic. Part of it is cultural. 50% of Californians surveyed yesterday said they would like to leave the state. Part of that, again, is high housing prices and immigration and all that, but part of it is deeper than that. It has to do with the most basic of all questions. Where shall I raise my kids? Not here. These people hate my kids, actually. They hate my kids. And they want to propagandize them and control them and destroy their lives. And I don't want to be around that, so I'm moving to Montana.
It's a really anti-kid culture.
It's 100%.
It's an anti-kid.
And of course, you pointed out earlier that the people who talk about tolerance are the least tolerant. That's one of 1,000 ironies, because as you get older, you realize everything is irony. Mm-hmm. And whatever someone is fighting in the name of is almost exactly the opposite of what he's really doing, always.
Oh, Harvey Weinstein.
Harvey Weinstein,
yeah.
The AG of New York. Oh, there's nothing worse than hitting women, he says, on his way to beat his girlfriend. So the state that talks about children the most is the state you wouldn't want your kids to set foot in. And again, that can't last.
Oh, that was fantastic. And Meg, I know you had a great time in New York with Tucker Carlson. I just love that title, Meg, The Importance of Fathers. Again, we talked a little bit earlier with Phillip Rivers about, being a hero dad. But Meg, that really is important, isn't it? The importance of fathers.
One of the things I love about my job is that every parent, every dad is the same. Every father wants their kids to do well, to be happy, to thrive. And it doesn't matter if they're wealthy or they're poor, or they live in the Philippines, or they live in Uganda or Virginia. Every father's heart is very, very similar. And that's that common thread that I see in a lot of these men is just delightful.
Yeah, it's really amazing. If you're just joining us, you're catching the tail end of Parenting Great Kids, and this is our special 200th episode. It's just amazing, all the guests, and Meg's had some great solo shows as well, answering your questions on Parenting Great Kids. So we're winding it down now, and we have time for one more clip. And I know, Meg, this was obviously one of your favorites, and it's Carol Swain, and this title was CRT, Sex Ed and Other School Issues. What's something special, Meg, that you recall with your interview with Carol Swain?
Carol is a pistol, and she's had an amazing transformation happen in her life on many different levels. She was born into dire poverty in a shack in Virginia with no running water as a Black woman, and she felt there was so much going against her, and yet she worked really hard and eventually became an associate professor of politics and public policy at Princeton. She taught political science and law at Vanderbilt. She had a book published by Harvard University. And it's interesting because in her early midlife, she was very liberal. And then she became very conservative. So here she went from dire poverty to tremendous notoriety and professional success, to being liberal and then switching to conservatism. And I thought that is so intriguing. I really wanted to hear about her life and transformation on both those levels.
Yeah, it really was a powerful interview. So let's go ahead and turn to this interview with Carol Swain on our special edition of Parenting Great Kids. The title of this episode is CRT, Sex Ed, and Other School Issues.
What we've seen alongside of the rise of CRT popularity and teaching is the acceptance of what we have now, which really is a fad, is the gender dysphoria, which results in children being transitioned from a girl to a boy to a girl, and talk about denying science. When you deny DNA, I don't know where you go from there. Does that have anything to, the parallels are pretty remarkable. Do you think that trend has anything to do with the trend that you're talking about?
Well, it comes out of a critical theory. And if you look at postmodernism and this whole movement, it's about destruction of traditional institutions, such as marriage and the family, the church, schools, the government. And so it's about tearing down, it's about, they're very much interrelated. And just like you have critical race theory, there's critical feminist theory, critical queer theory, critical colonialism theory. There are many different critical theories, and they all rooted in Marxism. And the people that say that they want to bring us together, that's a lie, because everything they do is meant to divide. And what you find with companies, they're being forced all across America, corporations, they bring in their DEI trainers, diversity, equity, inclusion trainers, and critical race theory trainers that they call themselves sensitivity trainers. And what they do is disrupt the environment, whether it's the workplace or the school place. They disrupt the environment. They shame and bully white people that don't go along with them, and they force people into silence. And then racial and ethnic minorities who may have been, just well-adjusted, part of the team, everyone working together towards a common end, they try to create grievances and friction there. And I think that we want to live in a society where the dignity of every individual is respected. And so I believe as a Christian that all men and women are created in God's image, and that we are to love one another. And I don't care about a person's sexual orientation or what they, do in their bedrooms. And it offends me that we have the LGBTQIA, I forget all the alphabets, that they want to force us, to get into their bedrooms and to agree with their lifestyle.
Oh, wow, that is good stuff. What a day. Kind of reflecting back and picking some of your favorite episodes over the years. Meg, what are some of your thoughts as you reflect on the past 7 years and these past 200 episodes?
It's been pure joy. And I remember way back when we started the podcast, I had one goal: to really encourage parents and let parents know they've got this. Don't let life be so overwhelming with your kids by worrying about so many things you just don't need to worry about. And we've tried really hard to find experts in the field, and I think we've done a pretty good job of it. So if we want to find an expert in a field, we really dig hard to find the best and the brightest that we can to teach and encourage parents. And it really is as simple as that. That's my heart. And I'm really looking forward to the next 200 episodes where we can focus a little bit more on encouraging dads and giving them some important information that they need to have better relationships with their kids. Because as I said earlier, dads are shortchanged. And that's my heart, is to help them.
Yeah, well, this has been totally amazing. Jessica, hasn't this been fun?
It has. It's been so much fun. And there's so many great interviews and so much wisdom that we've been able to glean from our guests over the years. And so it was hard to narrow it down to this list, but I really wish we had more time to play more of these interviews for you. But there was just so many great interviews and we only had so much time today. But Meg, looking back, what were some of your favorite interviews that our listeners didn't get to hear today?
Laura Ingraham was fun. She's very inspiring to me. She works so hard, and I've known her for many, many years. Kevin Lehman. We had Benjamin Watson, who's another football player who's fabulous. Max Lucado, And we had Emma Benoit, that young girl. Do you remember her? And she shot herself trying to commit suicide. Unfortunately, she failed. And now she talks to parents about what it feels like to be that desperate. So I really encourage parents to listen to that podcast in particular.
So many great memories over the years, Meg. It's been such a joy working with you and putting these programs together. It's been really a blessing for me personally. So thank you so much for having me on the team to do this with you. And it was really a great time reflecting back today on all of these episodes over the years.
Yeah. And I'd second that and say thank you, Meg, for allowing us to be part of this process and this ministry, and also for allowing us to be on the show with you today.
Well, it's my pleasure. It's really important for me to have our listeners hear from you guys, because I'm the one out front and interviewing people, and I get the fun stuff, and then you guys do the nitty gritty stuff. Again, as I said, to make me look a lot better than I am. So thank you.
Thanks, Meg.
Well, that was such a great show, Mike. As we mentioned on the show, there were so many great moments from these past 200 episodes. I want to encourage our listeners to go to meekerparenting.com and click on the podcast tab up at the top of the page. There, you can scroll down and see all of the past episodes that we have released over the years. They are there for you to listen to or share with your family and friends.
Yes, Jess, that is a great way to hear all of the shows you might have missed. Also, I want to mention, if you need help, encouragement, or answers to any questions about your kids or your relationship with them, go to meekerparenting.com. Meg has courses, tips, blogs, and more to help you. And if you know a dad who needs encouragement while you're there, check out her brand new Strong Fathers, Strong Daughters Masterclass.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. Always remember, everyone, great kids are raised, not born.